overcoming poverty, burning off stress, paying attention with ADHD, building a career, beating a painful genetic disorder. After 13 years of helping others do the same, fitness became a foundation for my life's greatest gift and challenge, becoming a father. My name's Alex Van Houten, and I believe that what I eat, how I move, and what habits I live by are the rock upon which I build my physical, psychological, and spiritual well-being. And whatever I do will rub off on my kids and my community. Welcome to Defining Dad Bod, where we work to untangle the messy knots of the health and fitness industry as if your children's lives depended on it. Because they do. This is where we decide to make our bodies stand for something bigger than ourselves. This is where we find practical wisdom to live by, one powerful conversation at a time. May the words spoken here inspire you to keep moving forward no matter where you are. Who knows who you could be if you could become 1% better every single day.
We can do the show thanks to the support of listeners just like you. For more information how you can become part of the inner circle, go to definingdadbod.com/inner circle. That's definingdadbod.com/inner circle.
What's up, guys? This is Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. I hope you're doing super well. Today's episode is about fasted exercise and common misconceptions around what fasting actually does with regard to exercise. Yes, there's research out there that says it will help you to burn fat as a fuel source. Yes, there's research out there that says perhaps it can be a helpful tool for weight loss or fat loss. So today I brought a coach on who also has experience in metabolic analysis. That means using indirect calorimetry by putting a mask on somebody's face and measuring the oxygen and carbon dioxide that's coming in versus the oxygen and carbon dioxide that's coming out to determine the rate of metabolism and a number of other things like VO2, fat efficiency, and even personalized heart rate zones. Joel Yakowitz runs DEXAfit Seattle, and he and I take the time to walk through common misconceptions with regard to fasted exercise. So in today's show, you can find out whether or not it needs to be a part of your workout program right now, or if perhaps it might work itself in there in the relatively near future, given the goals of your current phase. And if you've got some significant body composition goals right now, or perhaps you'd like to work on your energy and your health and fitness, or your personal well-being, follow the link in the description below to register for our first ever Hormone Pyramid Mastermind. In 4 weeks, we're going to cover the nutrition and lifestyle changes that's going to help you boost the function of your thyroid and boost your testosterone. A mastermind is a 1-hour live discussion. I'll bring about 20 to 30 minutes of material to you, and then if you're joining us live, you have the opportunity to ask your questions and keep yourself accountable to both me and the group in the changes that you're working to make each week. I can't wait to help you burn fat better as a fuel source, keep your energy consistent, increase your muscle mass, and help you start sleeping better. All with powerful, practical nutrition and lifestyle changes. You can find the link to register in the description below, or find the Hormone Mastermind at definingdadbod.com/shop. Since this is our first one, I'm offering 30% off registrations through July, and we'll launch our mastermind the first week of August. And if you register in the next week or two, you can be a part of helping us to pick the time for the mastermind call weekly. That's definingdadbod.com/shop. I can't wait to see you there. And now let's talk about the potentially powerful tool of fasted exercise.
What's up, guys? This is Alex Van Houten with Defining Dad Bod. I hope you're doing super well. I'm ridiculously excited about this conversation. One, because I feel like, dang, Joel, it's been probably 8 weeks, 10 weeks. We've been trying to get on the phone with each other and have a conversation like this. So I've just been anticipatorily waiting. That's a new word. I put an LY on anticipatory. Waiting about this conversation because we've got some great stuff to cover. We're going to be talking about metabolic testing. We're going to be talking about fasted cardio. But before we get into all that, how's it going, brother? You having a good day?
Yeah, it's going great, man. Been super busy, and I've been looking forward to this too. And I know some of those delays in our this happened to be because of my crazy schedule that seems to be ever changing.
Man, life happens. We're both business owners. We're both dads. We're both coaching people and whatnot. We got plenty coming out of our ears. And trying to stay married to a happy wife. That's,
yeah.
that can be its own thing too. Maybe we'll talk about that later. I don't know. Fasted cardio and wives don't mix. So let's talk about your background, man, because I want to make sure the listeners really understand where you're coming from and how you got into doing what you're doing. I understand you've been pursuing your own health and fitness goals through exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle change for a long time, but it was like 3 years ago that you and your wife founded your company. You run DEXAfit Seattle, and you have a coaching through exercise and nutrition business as well that you guys are running. So you've got a lot of stuff going on. Talk about how you got there and what you're doing right now.
Sure. So yeah, that's it's a long story that I'll try to make this a short biography.
Only 2 minutes. Only 2 minutes. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
So yeah, my background is actually as a radiologic technologist. So I've been in the medical field for since 96, we'll just say. Well, we can do the math later. I started off working here at Harborview in the trauma center in Seattle. Kind of quickly went up the ladder into some more leadership roles, and then I've been managing medical imaging departments at the hospitals, a couple different hospitals for the last about 8-9 years. So yeah, so kind of when I went over this switch of being a rad tech, and which is a lot of running around, pushing equipment around, going up and down stairs in the hospital, moving patients back and forth on stretchers and gurneys and so forth, to more of a management position where, like most of us, we are sitting at a desk looking at computer screens. My weight changed, I'll just say. And then also, as you know, with the changes that you have in fatherhood, so as you have kids, your focus, your intent kind of shifts over to your family. During all that, I had to start going, hey, how do I get back in shape? That kind of started my own personal journey. I lost about 30, 40 pounds. And actually, I've done this twice, right? So I'm a dad. I have 3 kids. My eldest I have a 20-year-old son and an 18-year-old daughter who just graduated high school.
Congratulations.
And, now I got my second go around. We have an 8-year-old daughter currently. So I've done the dad thing twice now. And I've gone through the body change thing twice as well.
Gotcha.
That's where my journey started. And so being in the medical imaging field, doing x-ray, I was familiar with DEXA scan, but I wasn't too familiar with its body composition abilities. When I learned about that, and I should back up also and just say my wife is also a radiologic technologist. She did mammography. She worked with DEXA. She's been doing DEXA now for about 13, 14 years. So she was a little more.
Let me ask you about this. So at dinner time conversations, your kids are like rolling their eyes, right? Because you're talking about like real technical radiological stuff. And they're like, really? I don't want to hear about this again. I can see that.
Yeah. And then we've got our crazy stories, both having worked in hospitals and trauma and stuff. So it's not always dinner appropriate.
Right. Hey, we're eating. Stop talking about that. So you guys were both radiological techs together, and then through your own fitness journey, you got interested in obviously the body composition change of people and whatnot. And it sounded like when we were talking prior to this that people started asking you for help because of what they'd seen you do for yourself.
Right. And that I think flipped a switch or a light bulb, I guess you could say, is because I've always, even as a kid, I was kind of that person that people would go to and talk to about their issues and help people out. And so here I found myself in that role again, but now we're kind of with the fitness and health. And so that kind of took me into what can we do to, instead of working in the hospital and helping people that are sick, which the hospitals do extremely well, right? We're very good at helping people recover from various illnesses. but not that great at preventative measures. And here's where I think coaches and trainers like you, functional medicine physicians and others this is where I think the focus needs to be. And so both my wife and I wanted to get more on the preventative side. And that's kind of where we started pursuing opening up our own fitness lab. The idea that we could bring these technologies to everybody, not just for elite athletes or the kind of buried in basements in university study labs.
Right.
How can we utilize these pieces of equipment to actually benefit everyday people, whether they are athletes or just dads that are trying to, get a better body and health so that they can be there to support their families.
Yeah, I love that mission. And, you and I don't have the same background necessarily, but I was on my way to the medical field. And in that pursuit, as I was working through personal training, other people and whatnot, I looked at like a big dichotomy. So you go to the hospital and like you said, we're really good at treating an acute issue. Like here's a medical issue that you need to recover from and you need to be treated for, and then you can get on your merry way, right? When I came into the medical space, I was working to study orthopedic surgery there. Came into the medical space, what I found is that the people who were on the table just about to go back into surgery, they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to be there at all. And a surgeon would say, we want a lot more time with this person after their surgery, but we're only allowed, 3 follow-up visits because of the way insurance works and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And what I was finding in my practice at the same time as a personal trainer was the people who showed up every day for my sessions were just so excited to be there. I mean, they were like, oh, what are we going to do today? I don't like, they're crying the sports tear, don't make me pick up this weight. But at the same time, they chose to be there and they chose to make that change. And it was almost like the prevention side of things was a positive progression forward, whereas the treatment side of things, while necessary, it had so many negative emotionalities around it. And I saw an opportunity in my own practice, it sounds like with yours, to help people before they got on the table. And that was my switch as well. I didn't know we had that in common.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, but that's exactly and very well said. And it's something that we talk about all the time is the difference between patients that we used to get in, and and we not saying that didn't enjoy my interactions with patients,
right.
But it is a very different context for them. You're right. They don't want to. It's not like they said, "Hey, I'm going to go to the hospital and get these imaging studies done." They're prescribed to go there for reasons that they wish they didn't have to be doing, right? Where now, when we are seeing clients, these people are coming in here because they want to be here. Right?
Absolutely.
They're really interested in the information that they're going to get. It's a very different experience. And like you said, it's a much more positive experience. And it's fulfilling, I think, for both sides. And definitely I feed on that.
Yeah, same. And so we're going to talk about fasted cardio in a bit, because it's a really important topic. People have a lot of questions, not just about fasting and cardio, but then you put the two together and gosh, it's even diving into the research can be extremely confusing. So before we get to that point though, I want to talk a little bit about the technologies that you've brought to the everyman. I don't know what else to say. When we were talking about using X-ray technology to understand body composition, that's pretty powerful. And then I also understand that you do metabolic analysis as well, where you're actually putting on a VO2 analyzer on somebody so that you can measure both their resting metabolic rates and their active metabolic rates via progressive and stair-step protocols. So I want to dive into those technologies just a little bit and talk about what you do on a daily basis, who's coming in your front doors, what are they finding out about themselves, that sort of stuff, and maybe how it's changed how you think about exercise, because I know this has been a pursuit for you for a long time, exercise and nutrition. And so it'd be great for the listeners to hear kind of what that technology has brought to the table. Is it just pretty fridge art that you paid a lot of money for, or does it actually inform you with regard to making changes?
Right. Yeah. That was a concern was, are we buying a lot of expensive toys here? But yeah, there is a lot of great value that you can get from these devices. So you're correct. Yeah. So we have a DEXA machine. The DEXA machine is a dual energy X-ray is what that stands for. It's a 8 to 10 minute test. You just lay on the table, and using these two different energies of X-ray, we are able to determine different substrates in the body. So we separate out lean mass, lean tissue, fat, and bone. All right. And we're also going to get some bone density information from this. So what's cool is the DEXA doesn't just give you a body fat percentage, which some of the other devices can do. The DEXA tends to be used more widely in studies and research. There's protocols that you can use to get the accuracy is pretty darn good. It's pretty much the best thing that we have out there right now.
It's the gold standard. I tell people it's the
the
gold standard to know what your body is made of. When we say body composition, that's what your body is composed of. And so when people come to my practice, they say, I'd like to lose weight. I'm like, well, I could cut your leg off. That would definitely do the trick, and they're like, no. I want to look good in the mirror and stuff. Okay, you want to lose fat, and that's important. And when you look at your body composition stuff in a DEXA scan, you're able to look precisely at what your body is composed of, and then hopefully track those positive changes over time, right?
That's exactly, yeah. It's very cool because of that. So we'll be able to see how much lean mass you have on you, which you can correlate to muscle. We'll get some ideas about your bone health and quality. As over time, we can lose some of that. There's some bone degradation as we age, and we want to make sure that we are keeping that and maintaining that. And then, of course, like there's fat. And so we have different types of fat in our body too. And the DEXA that we use will also show you that visceral fat, which is the more dangerous fat that's around our midsection, which is a concern, especially for males too. We tend to store more of our body fat in that area. So it's another valuable thing to look at. We also get some symmetry with the DEXA that you don't get in other devices. So we can look at for muscle imbalances and see if there's some different things that you need to do with training as well. So that kind of the DEXA gives us that body composition information. And then we have a metabolic cart as well. And we do resting metabolic tests. And then we do test on exercise too. And we do a VO2 max test. The resting metabolic test will provide you information about your calorie needs, get some information about your metabolism, as kind of the speed of that metabolism and what you are using as a fuel source, whether you're using fats or sugars as well.
Yeah. So important. I don't want to preach too hard on a soapbox here, so I won't yet.
But we both know the value of these tools.
Yeah. When you talk about body composition, it's amazing to me when I talk to the average person about their health and fitness goals and what they're doing to better themselves. They'll say things like, I've been working really hard. I've changed my nutrition, but my scale hasn't changed much in the last couple of weeks. And I'm like, well, what other measures have you made to help you understand whether or not you're making progress? And they'll say things like, my clothes are fitting a little bit better. I guess, I'm seeing a difference in the mirror. And it's like, what? You don't have numbers? Yeah, like, and I say that
you're not a geek like me.
Yeah, I know. Right? Yeah. I need a printout of all of the things you could possibly put around a person. But when I'm talking to them, it breaks my heart for them, really, because whether we like it or not, there's an emotional connection to seeing progress, period. And if all of that progress is kind of wrapped up in the number on the scale, and there's nothing worse than watching somebody work super hard, do all the right things, and actually change positively, but not even know it.
Yeah.
Like not even know it, I'll say this and then I'll shut up and let you talk about your metabolic testing there. But I think about the positive adaptations that happen through exercise in the first couple weeks of training. And a lot of people don't know. You increase blood volume, which could be like 1 to 3 pounds. That's good. You want that. That increases your VO2 and ability to burn calories and utilize fat as a fuel source and recover muscle and have better energy. Like all of those are good things, right? And then you also start to see you could call it, especially in deconditioned individuals, a reawakening of lean body tissue. As that tissue begins to fill with water and become metabolically active, that's why you can see somebody go from, doing really, really light shoulder presses their first workout to going exponentially higher and 3-4 workouts later, because you have neuromuscular change and you have that tissue change. And so it's possible that you could do everything right over 3 weeks and gain a couple pounds. And if you had metrics like you have with something like a DEXA scan, you can see that I've done all of the right things. My body's changing positively. I've even lost fat, but it's not going to show up on the scale yet. Are you seeing that sort of stuff when you're talking to the average person about their body composition numbers?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, there's been a few times I've had people come in and they're like, yeah, my trainer's just, they have me on this routine. And they'll say some things like you said too, like my clothes to me fitting better, but I'm not seeing any change on the scale. I'm thinking about leaving them, right? And we'll get them up on the DEXA and we'll look around and we'll go, oh, you know what? You've gained 8 pounds of lean mass and you've lost 9 pounds of fat. So you're seeing a 1 pound difference on that scale, right? Gravity is a terrible measure.
Yes, so right. And then you couple it with something like your resting metabolism, which, as you and I know, I'm not preaching to you. I just want to make sure everybody knows what we're talking about. Resting metabolism is if you did nothing today, what is the energy need of your metabolic rate in your body? And some people are higher and some people are lower. And if you're a big strapping man, you're going to need a lot more calories than, my teeny tiny wife. And that's important. That's resting metabolic rate. But there are changes that you can make in your program that could show short-term benefit with your body composition, but your metabolism will suffer as a result. So I see sometimes in my practice, and I'd like to hear if you do as well, somebody will come in and do like a resting assessment. And let's say they burn 1,700 calories per day. Great, fantastic. And so we have some caloric conversation around that. And then they come back 6 months later, and this person, they've lost like 20 pounds. They're looking decent, but they're talking about having low energy and whatnot. And come to find out, they've been eating 500 less calories than we talked about last time. And we measure their resting metabolism today, and it's 1,300 as opposed to 1,700, meaning that you might have lost weight, but what you've done is changed your metabolic rate to be lower than it was when we first started. And in some cases, that's not a terrible thing, especially if you're starting on the high end of things. But for many of those people, that means keeping this weight off and losing muscle tissue and all that stuff. Those aren't positive adaptations. And so we have to work toward getting them to restore their metabolic rate while maintaining their body composition change. And that can be really challenging. Have you seen similar things as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that can be very challenging. So you kind of start getting an idea when you pair these things together, the DEXA, the metabolic testing, what's that window that you kind of have an opportunity of how much of a deficit can I go into before I start doing things like we're talking about of slowing our metabolism down. That metabolism slows down, that window shortens, and now things just start becoming more difficult. And I think most people have heard about the Big Loser study. That's a perfect metaphor for what we're talking about. Right. Just for those who haven't, basically they did a study that looked at all the contestants of The Biggest Loser. Every single one of them, their respiratory, what we're talking about, this RMR, resting metabolic rate, lowered because they had them on such a low calorie intake while their exercise was massively high and intense. So they all lost weight. Their metabolism dropped a lot. And then what has happened is every single one of them gained, except for I think one guy, right? every single one of them, their weight went back up, and some of them even worse, because now they're kind of battling this crazy small window and an activity level that they couldn't maintain as well. So and we definitely will see, not as drastic as that, of course, but that's just a great metaphor for why we look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I talk about it regularly on the show. When we think about caloric intake or exercise, I'm always arguing to stop thinking about your food as calories in some ways. Not to say that it doesn't matter completely, which is a great conversation I'll be having soon. with another gentleman who wants to take me to task. So get excited. But then from a calories out perspective, we think about it from an adaptations standpoint, meaning that if we can achieve a sort of energy balance that matters well for you, then we also want to be incorporating foods that are worth building yourself out of and that aren't going to hurt your metabolism in the long run. Similarly, through exercise, we have a caloric deficit on the other end of things. But if we think about our exercise as more than that, as increasing our resting metabolic rate, or at least keeping it the same while we're in a deficit, then we see positive adaptations as well. An example would be, there's a difference between you and I. Let's say we want to work out and we want to, I don't know, get shredded for dad's side pool barbecue. Okay. I don't know if that's a thing, but it is now. So,
yeah.
So there's a way that you and I can exercise over the next 2 weeks that will burn fat, but lower our RMR. That would be like, let's say we just go running all the time. We just run and run and run and run. And we burn all kinds of calories. We're going to burn some fat, but we're also going to lose some muscle tissue in that process. And our body's going to compensate with less thyroid hormone, and we're going to have higher cortisol, and we perhaps even lower testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
Or we could spend the next 2 weeks doing a great periodized cardiovascular program with some weight training thrown in. And in that hypertrophy sort of way, we could actually elevate our RMR while burning some extra fat. We might not we might not lose a lot of weight per se, but we're going to be great at the poolside barbecue. Like, we're looking good, right? And then when we come, do our metabolic test, we find we didn't do anything harmful to our resting metabolic rate to start. And I think when I'm talking to people, if I can help them understand that these sorts of measures help us to really get a handle on what is actually changing and whether or not that's a good thing.
Right.
Versus, I look good in the mirror, my clothes fit a little better, the scale's not changing much, but I'm dropping a little bit. The more information we have, the better understanding we can have about what kind of nutritional changes would be better for the future, what kind of exercise changes would be better for the future. And then the recovery and lifestyle habits, I'm sure you find yourself coaching that a lot. If people are telling you all their problems, then we get there. So I know I've been talking quite a bit. What would you add to that, if anything, when you're talking about combining the power of body composition with metabolic analysis?
Yeah. And so I kind of operate on I guess a platform, you would say, of I want to look at expansion. So yes, we may need to look at doing some decreases of calories and things like that to kind of start moving towards our goals. But eventually, I want to look at making you a stronger, more powerful human being, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
All about empowering people, and just constantly depriving is not the way to do that, right? Humans are pretty awesome creatures. I mean, look, we've kind of dominated and taken over the world, and there's a reason for that. So we need to kind of embrace that. So yeah, we may need to do some calorie deficits. But we're always kind of looking at increasing, like, how can I kind of increase my activity to a point where it's giving me the benefits? We can do these. So these measurements are helpful to see, like you said, are we getting the adaptations that we're wanting and not the ones that we necessarily aren't working for us? And then, but it's the actions, the tests give us a little peek into time of like, hey, what's happening, right? But it's the actions that we take from those that are going to do all the work. And we just want to make sure that we're using the proper actions. But yeah, if we can start getting to a point where we're increasing our, being able to eat more, we have more energy, we can do more, we're stronger. All of those things are going to help with health, longevity, and everything. That's kind of where we want to get to. There may be a couple different tasks that we have to do along our way of getting there. It's not a straight line.
I love that. I just had a conversation with one of my clients this morning. He's been working with me for a year. Dude's doing fantastic. He's lost just over 40 pounds. And when you do the measurements, that actually translates to more like 52 pounds of fat and actually gained some muscle in there too, which is just sexy as hell. I guess I can say that. Plug your kids' ears. So he's doing a great job. And he posted on social media a picture of his carrot cake that he ate with his wife. And I liked it. And I was like, that you're getting to a great point in your training when your trainer can like your carrot cake, like, and not feel guilty about that. Like, oh no, he saw I ate carrot cake. And the reason that matters is because he's been working for a year in a way that you're talking about, expanding his capacity. His metabolic rates have gone up. His musculature has gone up. His ability to handle carbohydrates through insulin sensitivity has gone up. So if he eats a carrot cake with his wife during their night out, it doesn't ruin everything. You know, it doesn't throw him into some sort of fat accumulating state that he has to make up for by running 7 miles or something. Right. It's just, we've created a body for him that can do what he likes to do without ruining his metabolism in the process and his body composition, right? So I love your concept of expanding your capacity, expanding your outlook on being able to enjoy things in life, and then also expanding your understanding of you as a biological creature with exercise, nutrition, and lifestyle all wrapped together to help you achieve that. So high five, man. Keep up the fight and the good fight.
For sure, yeah. It's kind of bringing us around to the fasted cardio, right? So
you got, I couldn't think of a better segue.
When we're looking at this, we're talking about, well, maybe defining fasted cardio might be a good thing, because I think that there's a lot of definitions out there. Sure. And some confusion as well. Even just fasting alone, I think there's a number of, if you look at fasting, you're going to come across all kinds of crazy and a wide range of what people are talking about. So when people are saying, yeah, I've been fasting, that can mean probably about 10, 12 different things.
Yes. Like 9 hours or a week. Like there's
right.
Are you replenishing with branched chain amino acids, or are you only drinking water or whatever? Yeah, it's such a convoluted thing right now. I personally, as a spiritual individual, I'm glad that fasting is a conversation that's out in the general public right now. I think it's important personally for me for a number of reasons. But when it comes to exercise, there are so many misconceptions around the ability to fast and exercise. When is that appropriate? What does it even do to you? And so we've had this conversation about long-term adaptations and expansion. And so kind of with that in mind, I think it'd be really powerful to talk about, in your mind, let's define fasting cardio ideally. If you're going to do some fasting cardio, what state is that? What does fasting actually mean? When are you doing this cardio? That sort of thing. And then let's talk about what kind of adaptations we can expect, because in my experience and even in the research, it seems that there are reasons to do this and there are reasons to stay as far away from it as possible. And I'd like to clear that up for people.
Yeah, no, sounds good.
So define that for me. Somebody does your testing and stuff and they're like, hey, what about this fasted cardio thing? What is that? I guess we start there.
And honestly, I think there are a number of ways that you can take these actions and have a different kind of what you're doing as a fast, right? But I'll hear some people saying, oh yeah, I've been fasting for 3 days. And then I'll find out, oh, they're eating like 200 calories a day. And so I'm like, well, is that really a fast? Not really. To me, a fast is you're not taking in any calories, right?
Right.
And then you also kind of get these low insulin or glycogen fasts where maybe they're eating protein or fats, but zero carbs, and that is sometimes called a fast too, and can definitely have some of the benefits, but it still is very different. So I like to kind of define a fast as a period with no food. Water's fine, right? But we're not really taking any calories. Let's just say no calories. Typically, just an easy way to do this is we're kind of talking about like we're basically fasting as we're sleeping. Okay. You go to bed, you had your last meal, let's say at 8 o'clock. You go to bed at some point. When you wake up, you've been probably fasting for 8 hours. You skip breakfast, you're getting close to 12-hour fast, et cetera. Right?
Yeah. It's in the name, right? Breakfast,
That's
break,
right.
fast.
Break fast. That's what breakfast is. Yeah.
That's right.
So if you skip that,
right. You are continuing to fast. You have unbroken fast.
Now for some people, this is actually difficult because they're not used to doing this, and you might actually this could be something that is worth training, actually, is training to see how long you can fast for, and can you extend that a little bit. So just a little bit of a side note, and I do tend to do this, so go ahead and feel free to keep me back on track.
Yeah, you're fine.
Studies of fasting do show higher benefits for a longer fasts rather than the more frequent fasts. All right, so very popular right now is these kind of 16-8 windows, and I see a lot of people that are coming in
all week long.
Yeah. So they're just making a short eating window of where there may be like 8 hours where they're feeding, and the rest of that is 16 hours where they're not eating.
And when you say benefits of fasting, let's make sure that everybody understands here. We're not just talking about body composition here, right? We're talking about elevated immunity. We're talking about insulin sensitivity. We're talking about lowered cortisol. Feel free to jump in and define that, because a lot of people think about benefits of fasting like I'm going to lose weight faster, and that's not what all of the research is about. Right.
Actually, that's probably a good thing to talk about. It's like, what do people think are the benefits of fasting or fasted cardio, and what do people think are the drawbacks to fasted cardio? That might be a good place to kind of start. So a lot of the, I guess, potential benefits, or the things that people maybe think are the benefits, is that maybe you're going to burn more calories from fat if you're doing fasted cardio.
Right.
There's thoughts that I will improve body composition from fasted cardio because I'm burning more fat, right? Mm-hmm. So you might have greater weight loss if you're doing fasted cardio. And then, of course, there's things like increasing insulin sensitivity. And then I guess on the negative side, what are some of the drawbacks, or what you hear out there is my performances could be poor or take a dive, which means my adaptations wouldn't be as good. And muscle loss is another one that you hear as well. So that's just some of kind of what's out there. And then there's some science that we can look at to see which of those are actually the true, and which ones we might want to think about using. And you alluded to, and you're correct, there's a lot of research that's showing, as far as weight loss or body composition alone, there may not be any advantage to either strategy, whether it's fasting or fasted cardio. Doesn't seem to be if all things being equal, we'll say, calories intake being equal, there's not a benefit, pro or con, to doing fasted cardio or even like a carb fed prior to doing the cardio.
Yeah, let me jump in there. Just talking about some of the things that I've seen or seems to be pretty important to the populations that I work with. When we're talking about, people say intermittent fasting or time restricted eating on that front, a lot of the benefits of this sort of thing, and you alluded to the fact that there's more benefits, you get more of this positivity with a long fast, like a 2-day or 3-day fast, as opposed to spending an entire week doing 16-hour fasts with 8-minute feeding windows, that you get more benefits out of those things. But the time scale is really important here too, when we look at the big picture, right? So when you take a deconditioned individual and you put them through 2 weeks of intermittent fasting, and by that 16, window here with 8, all things being equal, like you said, if the calorie consumption is the same for that individual, then in that 2-week span, the weight loss is no different. Now, some of the positive benefits might be decreased A1C, which would be your insulin sensitivity or blood sugar is dropping in a fasting state. That's powerful. You could have increased oxidative fats, meaning at rest, you burn more fat as a fuel source in this fasted state, right? And then I've also found for these particular individuals that they start, I don't want to speak for everybody here, but they start to respond to hunger cues better. Yeah. When am I really hungry? And when am I eating because it's a habit, or maybe it's an emotional thing, or, I'm at work and I always get that honey bun or whatever it is that is a part of my day. When you fast, you start thinking, oh, that's hunger. Got it. And it sounds weird, but many people have forgotten what it feels like to be hungry in my practice. So those benefits are different when you look at 6 months. So if you take a 6-month window, you see like the testosterone boost that comes from intermittent fasting, that goes away completely. In fact, many studies are starting to show that in men, testosterone can actually go down if you're intermittent fasting with significant levels of activity as well, which could be problematic. And then in females, they're just a horribly underrepresented population. In the studies I've read, you get like 2 of them.
Yeah, research is not there for females as much, unfortunately. It's getting better.
Yeah, it's getting better. Their population they like to play with is the females during Ramadan. So like that's a very specific population, a very specific type of fasting. And even then the studies don't show a whole lot of benefit over a long period of time. And then you have to ask about whether or not this woman's of childbearing age or after menopause or all kinds of fun stuff. But I rabbit trailed there. You didn't bring me back, man. Come on. So anyway, all that to say that when we say benefits of fasting, it's important for people to think about a time scale here. For my part, I think of fasted cardio, and we'll talk about possible benefits and adaptations in the research. I think of fasted cardio as a very short-term tool in an exercise program for a very specific reason, but it's not something I would recommend all of the time, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it very frequently. So anyway, that being said, let's talk about why. So what kind of research are you finding that really makes you question some of the things that are out there that people consider? Hey, I want to burn more fat and I want better body composition, versus, hey, I might lose some power and performance output and, I might feel less energetic in my workouts and recover more poorly. What are you finding?
Yeah. So kind of getting around to like what would be good reasons for, and what would be reasons maybe against, right?
Yeah.
Or what are the good reasons for it? We can start with. So yeah, the reasons aren't directly related to weight loss and body composition. However, indirectly, for a lot of the reasons that you just stated, it is. And that's the type of stuff that gets lost in the research, right? There's no research that talks about like, hey, yeah, but people learn their hunger cues better. And, these are, so this is where in real life, where people like you and I and others can find the other benefits to it. So you're not making those types of change. The goal is not going to be, I'm going to do this exercise and I'm going to lose more weight than if I didn't do it this way.
Right.
It's at a more of a cellular level, and then like some behavioral and signaling as well. So we touched on a lot of those. So one way to think about this is when you are doing fasted cardio, and we both do metabolic testing. So you get up on the treadmill and we're looking at when are you burning fat and when does that switch over and start burning sugars, right? In a fasted state, you will be utilizing, at rest as well, right? You will be utilizing a higher percentage of fat. So your fat oxidation goes up. And that's where that gets confusing, where people are like, oh, if my fat oxidation is going up, that means I'm going to be burning more fat.
Right.
Acutely, yes, but we live longitudinally, right? So over the span of time, it does start equaling out, and our body is always in homeostasis. It's always looking to balance things out. Slight rabbit hole. One study that was pretty interesting was it showed fasted state cardio versus non-fasted state cardio. The fasted state, as we expect, higher oxidation during their workout. And these are low to moderate workout. And I really kind of tend to believe that in the doing fasted cardio, their benefit is going to be in the aerobic state. So we're talking about lower cardio output. If you're doing high intensity interval training in a fasted state, some of the benefits that we're talking about aren't going to take effect. Not to say that there's not benefits to doing this, doing it that way, but that's a sort of a more of a de-stress model, which we'll probably get into too here at some point. So
yes.
Let's see. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So if you're in a fasted state, higher oxidation, however, at the rest of the day, you start switching over and your carb usage and sugar usage it becomes higher. Now on the other side, people that came in and ate carbs and then did a fed state cardio workout, they burned a higher percentage of carbs and sugars during their activity. The rest of the day, they actually were burning more fat. Oxidation was higher the rest of the day. So you can kind of see that I'm talking about the homeostasis. It starts balancing out.
Yes, yes, and it's such an important point to make. So you'll see research, and you could Google this right now if you're interested in this sort of thing. Fasted cardio burns more fat, and not only will you see research, but you also see the 20, I don't know, scientific. What am I trying to say? The New York Times little segments on, is fasted cardio the next thing to help you with the obesity epidemic, and they'll cite the study about burning more fat. That's great, fantastic.
Yeah,
and
true.
Exactly. But there's always the rest of the story. And one of the things that fasted cardio seems to do for somebody throughout the rest of the day is increase carbohydrate burn. And so you might burn more fat during the workout, but you trade that for the rest of your day's fat burn as well. And it doesn't really seem, or at least I haven't found, it doesn't seem that we can mitigate that much. Some people have tried to do that with ketogenic diets and stuff, which is a whole nother conversation, which I've had with Dr. Adrian Chavez, if anybody wants to check it out, episode 17. But the idea that you're going to burn more fat in your exercise is not the end of the story. There's the rest of the story too, which has to do with how your substrates switch after a stressful bout like that.
Right.
Have you also found that in fasted states that the overall caloric burn in the workout goes down? So what I've seen in the research is the performance goes down, obviously, because you don't have the carbohydrates, the glycogen to give the body what it needs to, I call it your nitro boost, but the body what it needs at your higher levels of exertion.
Yeah, at least at the higher levels, correct. Yeah.
Exactly. So in a fasted state, you can perform pretty well up until about 7 out of 10 on a rate of perceived exertion scale. But when you start getting in that 8, 9, 10, especially if you've depleted a lot of your glycogen, depending on how long you fasted, you go work out, and the amount of calories that you are able to burn goes down. So you're burning more calories from fat, but because you have to limit the intensity of the exercise, then if you're purely thinking about caloric balance in this workout, then you burn more calories from fat, but you burn less calories overall. And so sometimes when you do the math there, it equals out as if you weren't fasting at all.
Yeah, and that kind of makes logical sense if you think about it as well. So personally, the calorie burn at different stages of exercise isn't something that I look at too clearly, but that makes total sense to me that would be the case.
The way the research bears it out is VO2 testing. So VO2 is directly related to the caloric burn of the individual. And you are actually unable to achieve your VO2 max in a fasted state compared to a fed state. You'll perform much better.
Yeah, and absolutely see that.
So let's talk about then the long-term effects of this sort of thing. So I mentioned that I might use this with clients for a very short period of time. Let's say that this just happened. I had a client who is going on a family vacation. She's got 5 sisters, okay? This chick's got 5 sisters. I can't even imagine what their house was like growing up. And she wants to look really good with her sister. She maintains a great regimen year round and stuff, but we had 2 weeks prior. And it's like, great. We did what you would call kind of a mild bikini competition cut. You might think of it that way. And so she had 3 sessions each week of a short fasted cardio phase. And by short, I mean like 25 minutes, nothing crazy. The reason for the shortness there is so that we don't elevate cortisol to metabolize muscle tissue. So while she's on vacation, she gains a whole bunch of fat that she lost, because that happens to people when they cut hard. Ask any physique competitor following a show, the refeed's intense, right? So anyway, that being said, I can use that for a really short period of time to help somebody achieve, looking well, or, getting good marital photos or whatever it is that you're interested in. But when people do this stuff for a long period of time, like I met a guy who's doing fasted cardio 4 days a week, and he's been doing it for like 4 months, then the overall effect that it seems to be bared out in the research is 2 things. 1, lowered resting metabolic rate. So that's a big deal. So you're burning more fat. That's great. But the rest of the day, your caloric burn, your metabolism has adapted to give you the energy you need in a fasted state, and then conserve energy all of the time after that, right? And then secondly, the tolerance to exercise at high intensities basically disappears.
Yeah.
Like your ability to perform at a higher level and utilize glycogen and glucose to really, put out a strength movement or a power movement, or even some of those lower rep, higher weight hypertrophy sets, you just can't. You just don't have it in you to train that because you've become so fat oxidative that you're unable to really tap into those short-term fuel stores. So what are you finding with regard to that? Because I think about this as like, man, this is not something you want to do long-term.
Yeah, right. So we're kind of talking about metabolic flexibility here as well. So you can find some benefits with doing fasted cardio or even just fasting alone. Right. Training your body to be able to oxidize fat better, right? And I get some of this from Mike T. Nelson as well as the expert in this. And I've done some work with him or some learning from him, I would say. Yeah, so that's where some of these benefits can be with the fasted cardio. Now, interesting, so we kind of talked about different substrates can do the same thing, right? So you can fast and fat oxidation will go up. There's the other thing, caffeine, some green teas, so there's things that you can actually do that also will increase fat oxidation. And I think that kind of helps tell the story of like, you can see like, just because I do that doesn't mean I'm going to lose more weight, right? If my calories are the same. But if you can be in a caloric deficit and you're going to increase fat oxidation at these lower to moderate intensity intervals, you start training your body to be able to utilize fat better at these times, which is what we're doing most of the time, right? Right now we're sitting here, we're talking, I want to be burning a high percentage of fat. And we'll see with our testing, I'm sure you've seen this too, that a lot of people are pretty poor fat burners, even at rest. And so if we can train our body to be better at that, and that's where I'm kind of getting at that metabolic flexibility, yes, then we are going to improve things. It is going to be easier to lose weight and all those things kind of down the road indirectly. And then on the other side, so ketogenic diet, we'll touch on this too. So the ketogenic diet is going to do that as well, right? So that can be a tool that is used to help with fat oxidation. But when you have people that are doing that ketogenic diet for long periods of time, and this is why you don't see a lot of CrossFit athletes, for example, that are on the pro level that are doing the ketogenic diet. So you start blunting the other end of the spectrum, which is how well can I access and utilize those carbohydrates? So you can still store your carbohydrates, but it's the access to those at these higher performance levels that gets blunted. And most of that is from the pyruvate PDH enzyme, which is going to access those carbs. That gets blunted and decreases when we see people that are on the ketogenic diet. And that's exactly what you're seeing is like my performance is not as good at that high end. So that may not matter to some people. Most people that may not be a big deal if performance isn't a huge goal.
Right. Yeah. If you don't use it, you lose it is the moral of that story, right? And on that end, you can see things from the performance community. Ketogenic diets seem to do pretty well with some of those high level endurance athletes.
Yeah.
They're not sprinting. They're running like hours and hours a day, right? And that's great. If that's what you're training for, that can be really powerful. But on the other end of the spectrum, if we're talking about strength training or creating some increased lean body mass, some musculature and whatnot, there's very limited application and probably very little, if any, to blunting the side of being able to use your glucose to create that sort of intensity. And, I think for me, that really comes to the idea of exercise periodization. So we do conditioning and create the ability to burn fat as a fuel source. And then we work to grow some muscle tissue and to use that well with strength and power. And then we go through a rest phase where we kind of come back to the basics, prevent injury and whatnot. And the idea of fasted cardio really loses its ability to create positive results when we're talking about those higher levels of periodization, when you're in the hypertrophy muscle growth phase, or you're in the power and athleticism phase. There's really just, in my opinion, no reason to go for a long run while you haven't eaten anything, unless it's like once in a while. It's not like a 5-day-a-week sort of thing.
Yeah, and that can be a great tool, right?
Right.
Maybe how do you use this and what are the benefits? I think we've kind of gone over a little bit of the negatives and the drawbacks. So I like to prescribe maybe for especially someone that's is weight loss is their main goal, right? Is you eat your meal at dinner, go to bed, wake up, And then maybe we go for a walk fasted before we've eaten, right? And like we said, that's going to train some of that fat oxidation. And then the other parts of it is, it can make our more insulin sensitivity goes up, which means that when we are doing our workouts, we're able to get that insulin pushed into the cells better. Growth hormone increases. There's some other hormones affect as far as like satiety, leptin levels can go up.
Leptin and ghrelin,
I think what just needs to be clear is that there is not a huge amount of direct body composition advantages, but the advantages that you're going for are on these metabolic advantages. A big one is mitochondria biogenesis. You will grow bigger, stronger mitochondria doing this type of training, which is going to, you can think about it, this is your powerhouse, your energy source, makes ATP. So you're making a better engine by doing some of this type of training. And then, right, there's a threshold, I think, with everything. Doing this kind of thing 4 days a week is probably not, you're going to start kind of maybe losing some of the other things that you're hoping to gain. But, maybe a 30-minute walk once or twice a week is probably going to be, you get the benefits that you need. Even just the fasting alone can get some of those benefits. I just think it's a little bit more powerful if you're actually moving as well. Yeah, I think that kind of explains a little bit of those. And I did kind of jot down a few things of what we can do and what the gains can be. And like I said, fasting alone can have benefits. Biggest thing I think with this is this going to work for you? Right? Maybe you don't have time to do a walk in the morning. And so doing a fasted morning cardio routine isn't going to fit into your life, and it's going to be more of a struggle than it's worth. So you really have to look at these things too. It's like there's more ways to get some of these benefits than just one, right? So this is one tool that can be in your arsenal. There's some research too that shows that you can get some of the similar benefits. So you kind of have a postprandial stage, which is what we're talking about. It's like before so before you eat, which is this. And there's a postprandial stage, which is after you've eaten. Once that's passed and you've kind of come back to a baseline, so again, we're looking at about that 4 to 6 hours, our body comes back down. And if you don't, if you do some exercise at that point, you can get some of these same benefits. So maybe that's a way to work this in that's better for you as well. So I'm going to talk about that eustress and de-stress a little bit here too. I think this is a good spot for it.
Yeah.
So most of what we're talking about right here is the eustress model. So you're doing some training, you're making some adaptations, and you're recovering, and then doing some more training again. We're kind of keeping ourselves up in this kind of nice hill of stress, but in a positive recovery model. There's a de-stress model too, which I don't recommend to most people. But the thought behind this is where, let's say you have your last meal at dinner, you wake up in the morning, you do some high intensity interval training, you're depleting all your glycogen levels, and then maybe you just are eating a protein or maybe even just fat the rest of the day, and you are not refilling those glycogen storages. Then you repeat, you go to bed on a low storage level, right? So you've kind of depleted those glycogen storage. Wake up in the morning, and now maybe you're doing another high intensity interval training, or you're doing strength training or whatever. Your performance is going to suck, right? It's going to be horrible. But there can be some adaptations that happen from this type of method. And this is the de-stress model. Getting used to working your body in these stressful conditions can have some positive adaptations over a longer period of time. And again, this wouldn't be something that you would do leading up to any kind of performance or event or anything like that. But that can be another tool that could be used
in the conditioning phase. I've always thought of that as like, and I always thought it was funny. It was called the de-stress model because it sounds so stressful to me. Like,
yeah.
like I'm going to do the hardest workout I can. well, I'm basically feeling starved. Like you
Yes.
don't get any more stubborn and full of grit than when you can do your workout in that condition. That's for sure. Maybe sleep deprived from an infant, but that increases your risk of injury. So don't get crazy.
Yeah. Yes. That's another de-stress model.
I will say, side note, I have 2 cautionary notes for people, and that's this. Be careful with explosive movements in a fasted state. When your glycogen's depleted, that increases your risk of injury pretty significantly. I did some work with a company out in Denver who works with the Denver Broncos, and they were showing how they could actually show you the incidence or probability of injury increase by just using an ultrasound to measure how much glycogen was in your muscle tissue. And if it's significantly depleted, it's likely that you're going to tear a hammy next game. And that's bad juju for people who get paid millions of dollars not to tear a hammy, right? So don't do explosive things like box jumps or snatches or cleans or kettlebell snatches or really heavy swings or throws or whatever it is when you're in a fasted state. Bad juju for you. And the other thing I'll say is a fasted state's also a terrible time to learn a new technique. Neurons require glucose primarily, not to say they can't run off of ketones sometimes, but primarily they require glucose. And the way you learn a new technique, like let's say you haven't squatted before under heavy weight, or you don't know how to do a Turkish get up, doing so in a fasted state, you're actually going to learn it very stupidly over time. So don't do that. Stick with the tried and true robot version of exercise that you're used to if you're going to be fasted. And don't try to do anything crazy new or crazy explosive in that state.
Yeah, not the time to learn things when you're kind of putting your body into a more stressed state.
Amen. I use the same protocol I use when baby's sleep deprived.
Yeah.
Brother, this has been a great conversation. I could keep talking about this, but we're coming up on time.
Yeah.
So I'd like to give you the last word and tell people how they can get connected with you, especially if they're in the Seattle area.
Sure. Yeah, it's been fun. I hope we didn't confuse more than inform here, but
right.
Just maybe just as an overview is I think both of us recommend more on that low kind of aerobic, maybe to moderate intensity training in a fasted state to kind of get those benefits that we were talking about: increased mitochondria, insulin sensitivity, fat oxidation, metabolic flexibility, etc. Gene expression, I don't think we mentioned that as well, so that can be another benefit. But so I have my DEXAfit Seattle is the lab that we run, and that is located in downtown Seattle, not far from the Space Needle. If you're in the area, give us a shout. You can find me on Facebook, DEXAfit Seattle, and also Body Science on Facebook. You can email me at seattle@dexafit.com. That goes directly to me, and I try to post a few interesting articles and opinions and everything on my Body Science page, and you can message me there as well. I have a newsletter. You could request that. Could get you on that, and I try to share interesting things, and I might jot some stuff about the fasted cardio here since we kind of talked a lot about this here, so maybe I can put some bullet points and make this kind of tie this all in together a little clearer.
Yeah,
that might be something I do.
Well, and I would encourage everybody. First of all, I'll get that link from you so people can subscribe to your newsletter. I'll stick that down in the show notes here if that's helpful to them. And then also, I like your Instagram. Not that your Facebook isn't awesome. Yeah. You usually cross post between the two, but you post great stuff on Instagram as well. And I'm always looking for coaches who are posting real helpful things rather than, I'm doing another deadlift in front of my camera, which, well, I'm not going to start on that. Anyway, so thanks for putting quality content out there. And if that's something interesting to people, they should get connected with that.
Yeah, I actually am probably more active on my Instagram page than the other pages. It's just it's kind of a more informal way to do things, which I like. So yeah, my Instagram page is DEXAfit Seattle. And that's the one that you were talking about. And yeah, be friends with me there.
Well, thanks, Joel. I really appreciate you coming on here. I appreciate what you're doing, fighting the good fight with objective data to help people understand their bodies better and the positive adaptations they can make through nutrition, exercise, and lifestyle change. And if anybody has any questions about this particular thing, they're very welcome to obviously reach out to Joel and his information. And you can also, I encourage people to post on our Defining Dad Bod forum as well. and on the Facebook group or on the Facebook page. That way we can answer questions and make sure that if we've confused you more than helped you, we can take care of that. But otherwise, Joel, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It's been great.
Super cool, man. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. This was fun. Yeah, like you said, we could do this for hours.
We could. We won't bore everybody else,
No.
but we might get on the phone later. Until next time, guys, kick butt, take names.
The free practical advice and conversations here remain unbought and unbiased thanks to the support of listeners just like you. For more information on how you can become a part of the inner circle of Defining Dad Bod, go to definingdadbod.com/inner circle.